I got working doing some other stuff, waiting for 8:15 to roll around. So I am late because it's now 8:17. But sometimes that is just the way our days go. So it's good to be with you guys. I'll give you a couple seconds to come on. I'm actually looking forward to doing this, and then I need to do some podcasts. And then I'm going to head outside because it is beautiful out there, and I want to take every advantage of that beauty and of the wonder as to what's going on and just the sunshine and get some vitamin D. So I am really, really looking forward to getting out there. Good morning, Lee. And so it will be a wonderful day, enjoying the sunshine and just, everything that God has out there. So anyways, that's my plan. I hope to execute it successfully, but we shall see what really happens. So, all right, here we go. Let's dive in today. I actually have 4 pages of notes, so we'll see how much of it we cover. It might be a session 1 and 2. We'll find out. So yesterday, after I did this podcast, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to get, or not this podcast, the Facebook Live and YouTube Live. I'm thinking, all right, I need to do some podcasts because they go into a queue with they get queued up to be shown. And I'm out when Thursdays runs, that queue is empty. There's nothing left in it. So I had thought yesterday, okay, I'm going to do some podcasts before I move outside and get those done and out of the way. So I get out all the equipment, I grab my mic and I plug everything in and I open up the software, and I hit the record button. I'm not paying any attention to the computer because I've never had any trouble. So I go through the podcast, I record it. I'm like, yes, 1 down. I go to save it and I look at it and I'm like, oh no, it didn't record. So I'm like, all right, let me check all the connections. I checked all the connections. I checked everything and I hit the record button again and flatline. And it's not picking up my voice. I'm like, all right, I shut everything down, brought it all back up, tried it again. Nope, no record. So then what do? You hit the help button, you look at you look up all their various things which they say to do. All the settings are right, everything's fine. Hit the record button. No. So then YouTube. What do? Of course, you YouTube, you Google, what are the issues? So I did all that. All the settings are fine. Everything's fine. Do everything they tell me to do. Nothing. Finally gave up. Well, I'm looking, that's an hour and a half of my life that I have so much work to do. This was not a good start to the day. So I finally think, what am I going to do? So I email Charisma, because I work with them with the podcast. They're actually the main hosting platform, and that's who my contract's with to do the podcast. So I email them and I'm like, okay, guys, do you have any idea? Here's the software I'm using. Here's, do you have any idea what's going on? And I get a message back a couple hours later, which says, you're using a Mac and your system has probably been upgraded. And the upgrade has a bug in it that doesn't allow the software platform that you're using to work. You may have to buy a different software package to use. And I'm sitting there going, no. But because I finally knew what was wrong, it meant I did a Google search a different way. And with doing the Google search a different way, I found a possible back door. So when we're done today, I'm going to try to see if I can go in through that back door and bypass the bug on the Apple upgrade and see if I can actually record using my current software until that bug is fixed. And so, it was, here's the interesting thing. As I was thinking about this and thinking about, tackling that today and seeing if I could get in through the back door, I got to thinking about some other things. I got to thinking, how do we handle upgrades from God? Does it sometimes feel like or seem like the upgrade has a bug? And as I'm thinking about that, I began to laugh because, truthfully, God's upgrades are always perfect. The bug, the part that won't work, the malfunction is always within us, always within us. His upgrade is always 100% perfect. And so as I was thinking about that, and I honestly was laughing this morning because I am really, really annoyed at my computer right now. I have way too much going on to spend time with this, but it is what it is. I mean, you kind of have to stop and deal with it. But I was laughing this morning, and as I was thinking about God's upgrades, because we talk about, oh Lord, upgrade me. Oh wow, God, upgrade. And then boom, we hit a wall, and it's like, oh, well, maybe I missed it. Maybe that wasn't God. Everything's supposed to be easy. And it's like, it's an invitation to deal with the bug, which is us. Okay. I want to say, we're the bugs in this. Okay. The Lord, when he gives an upgrade, it's always good. And it's always an opportunity to step in more. So as I looked at this, I got to thinking about Peter, because, here's Peter. He's just a salty fisherman. Okay. He was one day going along doing what he loved to do. He was out there catching the fish. He was out there smelling the wonderful air out there, and just that's what he loved. He probably even liked the smell of fish. I don't understand that. I don't like the smell of fish. But anyways, he was out there doing what he loved. He was out there earning a living. Okay. And here comes Jesus, and he's like, okay, come on, follow me. Let's do a complete revamp. Let's change your life. Turn it upside down. Come follow me. And so, of course, he goes and I began to look at some of his journey, especially in Matthew. And so a while back, we talked about Peter walking on the water. And I absolutely love that story, because in my mind, here's Peter in the spur of the moment asking Jesus to tell him to come to him. And here's just a little sidebar here. Whenever we say to Jesus, can I come to you? His answer is always what? His answer is always yes. I hadn't thought about this, but in this moment when Peter said, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you, he had stepped into the very heartbeat of God for his children. And that is when we ask the Father if we could come to him, the answer is 100% always yes. Always, always yes. Peter had stepped into something that he didn't even realize that he stepped into before he stepped out on the boat onto the water. But anyways, so Peter goes, being Peter, and he jumps out of the boat. He defies the law of physics. We all know that. He walks on the water. And as I've stated before, in that moment, the water became a walkway or a pathway to Jesus. So now we know what happens after that. Of course, he begins to look around, and he sees the wind and the waves, and fear enters, and he goes down. How often when God gives us an upgrade, do we look around, we see the winds and the waves, and what happens? Boom, down we go. Okay, just say malfunction. Okay, malfunction. It's a malfunction. The Lord's given an upgrade program. That upgrade is fine. That it's perfect. But we're the ones with the malfunction. So as we look around and we see the wind and the waves, just as Peter did, we begin to go down. So you can just type in malfunction into that chat so that I know that you're connecting with this, because can you relate? Can you relate? It's like, oops, beep, 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 warning lights all over the place, red flags, okay? Malfunction, it's just hit. What does Jesus do? The same thing he does with us. He reaches out and he grabs Peter, and they step into the boat together. When Jesus reaches out and takes a hold of our hand, even in the midst of the bug, in the midst of the malfunction, he will always put us back on stable ground, because that's who he is, because that's who our God is. So we could say there's the patch right there. Jesus reaches out, he grabs Peter, he said, let's apply this patch. This patch is a connection with me. This patch will take you back into the boat and get you connected and on solid ground again. Okay, this is the patch. So just say patch. Okay, this is the patch. But remember, the malfunction, the issue is always on our end. Always. It wasn't that Jesus had the issue here. It was that Peter had the issue here. It's not that Jesus has the issue. It's that we have the issue. But he will always reach out. He will put that patch on and put us back in the boat. Imagine what Peter must have thought as he reflected back on this experience, as he reflected on the Lord telling him to come, as he reflected on the moment of standing on top of water and walking on it, as he reflected on going down, as he reflected at how he went and he needed to try to process that. But imagine trying to find a way to process the things that weren't really supposed to be able to happen. Okay, from Jesus walking on the water to him walking on the water to suddenly being back in the boat. Imagine trying to get your head around all that. All right, so just a thought. Now we journey on and we move from that passage. We're going to go into Matthew 16, and we're going to pick up at verse 13. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" "Well," they replied, "some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, others say Jeremiah or one of the other prophets." Then he said to them, "But who do you say I am?" And Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "You are blessed, Simon, son of John, because my Father in heaven has revealed this to you. You did not learn this from any human being. Now I say to you that you are Peter," which means rock, "and upon this rock I will build my church, and all the powers of hell will not conquer it." A little side note here, all the powers of hell will not conquer it. As Jesus said that, that's a very, very important concept or statement that we often just kind of breeze over, because it actually reverses the transaction that happened in the Garden of Eden on a personal battlefront. It says that when we are the church of God, all the powers of hell cannot have victory over it. It cannot conquer it. That's very important to remember. All right, so let's go back to Peter, because he's really who we're talking about. "And I've given you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you forbid on earth will be forbidden in heaven, and whatever you permit on earth will be permitted in heaven." Right here, everything's in working order. Of all the disciples, think about this. They're all sitting there. And who speaks up and declares who Jesus is? It's Peter. The rest of them stay quiet. I have to wonder right there with the rest of the disciples, how often has there been a group question asked and you're afraid to answer because you might get it wrong? And so I sit here going, what were they thinking? They'd been traveling with Jesus, and yet Peter's the one. Peter's the only one that Scripture records speaks up here. They speak up on who others say. The other disciples, well, they chimed in on who other people are saying Jesus is. But when Jesus says, "Who do you think I am?" I mean, maybe he was looking directly at Peter. That's very possible. And we know that if he was looking directly at Peter, everyone would have understood that Peter was to answer that. We don't know. Or maybe it was more, he was just looking off to see who answered. We don't know. I just find it interesting that Peter, in his boldness, is the one who says, you are Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus says, wow, he goes, Peter, man hasn't revealed this to you. Heaven's revealed this to you. And in this moment, I'm sure think about this, everything within Peter, he's being told that he's hearing from a heavenly perspective. He's seeing from a heavenly perspective. He's speaking, he's prophesying who Jesus is. Like he's speaking directly into that. In that moment, everything is functioning fine. Just put in victory. Peter, in that moment, is walking in the fullness of who God created him to be for that moment. And all systems are go. Everything's communicating. All systems are go. No patch needed. Okay, the upgrade is working. He's stepping from fisherman into a spokesman for the kingdom of heaven. Everything's working. In that moment, there is victory. There is victory. Okay, and how many of us can relate to those moments where it's like, yes, all systems are go, everything's functioning, I'm hearing, I'm seeing, wow, God, this is what you intended. It's an upgrade. Oh my gosh, God, it's so good. And so imagine Peter looking back again on that conversation. Again, heaven's revealing the mysteries to him. He's the only one who had responded to Jesus right there. So, but how often in the moment of an upgrade, in the moment of stepping into that, how often is that immediately followed by a challenge? Again, with my computer, the issue was the upgrade. The issue with the kingdom upgrade is always with us. And verse 21 tells us, as we go on, tells us that Jesus began to tell his disciples quite plainly about what was going to happen, and that he would be killed and that he would rise again. Okay, he was being very, very simple and very clear with them. But I don't think Peter heard past that you're going to be killed. I don't think he heard that you're going to rise again. Or if he did, he didn't have a box. He didn't have a place to even try to get that through his head to comprehend it, because it was so far outside the realm of everything he knew, so far outside the realm of everything he could understand from an earthly perspective. Because what on earth would Jesus mean when he says, I'm going to rise again? There was absolutely no context for it. And how often does God call us into something or share something with us that we don't have the context for? And so, but that's exactly what God does. And he was trying to help them understand what was coming so that they could step into the moment. But Peter, and I love this, in typical Peter fashion, I could so relate to this. Like I could see myself doing this. Actually, I have done something like this. So I really relate. But Peter, in typical Peter fashion, actually pulls Jesus aside. I mean, just envision this. Okay, Peter, one of the disciples, grabs Jesus by the arm. He's like, hey, sidebar, I need to talk to you. And Scripture, at least the New Living Translation, actually says that Peter begins to reprimand him. I mean, good grief, can you imagine? But if we're honest, how often have we tried to reprimand God and tell him he was wrong? Okay, the bug's always with us. So Peter actually goes as far as he reprimands Jesus to declare that Jesus is wrong. And he actually says, this will never happen to you. And Jesus's response to Peter, Peter, this one who had walked on water, and this one who had just been told that he was hearing from heaven and that heaven was revealing things to him. Well, in this moment, in 16:23, Jesus' response to Peter is what? Oh my gosh, he calls him Satan. Get away from me, Satan. For you're a dangerous trap. Trap literally means you're a block. You're a dangerous block to me. You're seen, and this is important, you're seen merely from a human point of view, not from God's view. One of the malfunctions that we often have walking with the Lord and navigating the upgrades and all that he's called us into is that we easily fall back into seeing from a human point of view rather than seen from the heavenly perspective. So in one moment here, Peter's seen from a heavenly perspective and he declares Jesus as Lord. The next moment, he's fallen back into an earthly perspective. And Jesus and goes to reprimand Jesus, and Jesus ends up saying, get behind me, Satan. And so right there, you can just type in major malfunction. Okay, major malfunction. All right. I can't even imagine like Peter standing there going, oh my gosh, what just happened? I mean, everything within me would want to just kind of slink away and never be seen again. And yet Peter's been called. There's a plan and a purpose. And all of us, there's moments in our lives where we massively mess up. We massively mess up. And everything in us wants to just kind of slink away and go hide someplace. And yet the Lord says, I want you to learn from this and I want you to stand because I've given you an upgrade and you have to learn to walk into that upgrade and your vision has to change. Your focus has to change so that you could step into the fullness of what I'm calling you to do. And this is necessary. And just like a child falls down and they get all skinned up and we pick them up and we clean them off and we bandage them and we encourage them to go, we kiss the pain away. What is God doing for us? Even when those major malfunctions, there's always restoration. There's always a road back because he's always going to pull us to him because when we say, Lord, can we come? The answer is always yes. And so I love that as we move, remember that's chapter 16. Okay. As we move into 17 immediately is the story of the transfiguration. And there's only 3 who get to go with Jesus. And one of those 3 is Peter. And so here he is again. And, he blurts out, let me set up 3 shelters because he doesn't understand what's going on. He doesn't, from an earthly perspective, again, it's making no sense. But Jesus had invited him in to see something that was totally humanly impossible, that by our laws was impossible, but from heaven's perspective, it was totally different. And he invited Peter in to actually be there to witness that moment. And I actually, with that I could just see Jesus. I mean, what I see actually is I see Jesus just kind of grinning, going, oh, Peter. And I think there's so often when we're kind of like horrified at what we've done. And Jesus is just going, that's my girl. That's my boy. I'm so proud of them. Don't you love them? Don't you love their spirit? Because you see that boldness and that courage was actually a gift from God that was being refined as part of the upgrade so that Peter could walk into the fullness of what he had been called to do. You see, that boldness, it was being refined to be used for the kingdom of heaven. The upgrade that Jesus gave was perfect. Peter had to make adjustments to come into alignment with that upgrade. With my computer, I'm hoping to find the back door after we finish this. I'm hoping to find the back door to get my software to work until a patch is available and everything begins to communicate again correctly. But with the kingdom, we need to know that we've been given all we need to step into those heavenly upgrades. We just need to learn to access it. We need to learn to walk it. We need to learn to step into it. In other words, we have a major learning curve that sometimes creates some malfunctions. But the thing is, an upgrade from the Lord is always good. It's always perfect on his end. There's always a way to get there. And so it's important that we don't just slink off. Take a look at Peter and look at his ups and downs, the roller coaster of a ride, and how God used him. Because you know what? Just like God had plans and purposes for him, he intentionally called him from being a fisherman to being a leader of the body of Christ. So it is with each one of us. He has plans and purposes, and they're good and they're perfect. The malfunctions with us, but he has given us, he has everything that is needed to fix that malfunction, because he will use it for his glory. So never let your perceived malfunctions disqualify you from what the Lord's calling you to do. They are a stepping stone. When used in his way, and we learn from them, they're a stepping stone to that upgrade. So be so blessed, everyone. Have a great day today.